All right, everybody, what's going on? This is the last bad publicity of 2015 before we head into a happy New Year's tomorrow. We got ourselves a good episode on the horizon. This is a new segment that we are starting. It's not going to be all the time. It's something that me and this new face here. We'll get to that in a second. We'll be talking about the current state of Jinteki. So this is called Unorthodox Predictions, and this is the first episode of it. So over to my co-host for this new show under the Bad Publicity channel, we have Cory.
Hey.
Cory, cool. What's going on, man?
Oh, well, it's doing good. Excited to talk about a bunch of red cards.
Yeah,
always love talking about red cards.
No doubt. That's why we bring you on here, man. You are, for the people that don't know, one of the newest recruitments on Team Bad Publicity. You are brought on as the Jinteki expert to field questions here in Jinteki, part of this segment.
Sweet.
Crazily enough, right? So, Cory, why don't you do a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I'm in the Atlanta area, so that's the meta I play in a bunch, so I get to play people like Pacer, Ahmed, and Ross and all of them on a regular basis, so it's pretty fun. I was on a previous episode talking about IG, because I was running one of those on camera a lot. It's one of probably my favorite ID to play on the red faction. I love it. I tend to see myself gravitate a lot more towards the grindy, taxing, erode the human soul style of playing. So I just remain calm and just keep grinding away and just see if I can just tax the runner down to making mistakes and then just capitalize on it. So my biggest hurdle is that they only give us 65 minutes in rounds at tournaments. So that tends to be a problem when you're trying to play IG and most of your games go 40 to 50 minutes before you find out who won the game.
I'm sure with that introduction, for those people that don't know you, you have just made a lot of friends.
You're right.
Because you've now become the guy that nobody wants to play against.
It's true. I remember like Zach Cavus would walk up to me in regionals, and the first question he asked was, "Are you playing IG today?" And I was like, "No." And then he smiled and was like, good to see you." And I was like, "Thanks."
Oh man. So let's get into the meat and potatoes here of our Jinteki show. SanSan cycle just wrapped. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into our full breakdown of those cards that we've seen during SanSan and give you our take on them for what we thought they were going to do, what they currently are doing, and maybe touch on where they can go in the future. Diving right in, so we have genetic resequencing. This was a 3-1 agenda. When you score genetic resequencing, you may place one agenda counter on an agenda in your score area. An ability that does seem quite interesting to use, but no one is using it.
Yeah. I think the only deck I've seen play this was there's a biotech that runs this with 3 Niseis, and they run a single copy of it. And if you get it at just the right time, it's a way to add another Nisei counter, and that's pretty much it. So you could potentially get a 3-1 for a new Nisei counter. That's really it. That's the only time I've seen this
There's
card.
No real other... I mean, there is, but there's no other agenda that you really want to boost in Jinteki with one more agenda counter. Currently, our pool of targets is very slim, and I mean, why are you going to, if you're running this one, you're probably running Niseis, and you're holding it for that ability. Because Jinteki already has a bunch of 3-1s that are better than this one, right?
Yeah, competing in the 3-1 slot is tough. Like, an agenda has to really do something itself. And the problem on this, too, is it can mess you up with timing. Because you may try to play this later when it may not be the best time for you to play it because you want to try to synergize off the ability. and it could be a detriment and just cause you to do just some bad play arrangements.
Yeah, or bung your hand up or something while you're holding it for the combo pieces. And then you're also holding an agenda for, however many turns. But, I mean, at least it's only 1 point of a combo, so it really shouldn't scare people off. But, like we said, it just hasn't seen very much play at all.
Yeah, I think it has a spot as like a one-of. Like if you just need an extra 3/1 in the deck, or you're running 3 of another 3/1 and you can stand to go down to 2 copies of it and make this a one-of, I think that's its spot. But I don't see any reason to really do more than that right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. The value of this card is heavily dependent on what we will see from Jinteki in other packs if they have agenda counter agendas.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
I mean, transitioning in again, we see another 3/1. This is Ancestral Imager. Whenever the runner jacks out, do 1 net damage.
And it's another 3/1 that I've never seen even in a deck in anyone I've played against. It seems like it could be cool, but again, it's competing in the 3/1 slot, and right now there's just so many better options, and you have to already set up combo pieces to try to prevent the runner from jacking out. I don't know.
Currently, Jinteki has been that faction that if you're running a net damage deck, it's been like, come in, hit each speed bump along the way, and then is the prize at the end a trap, right?
Right.
Do you go boom, or do you cheer as you've stolen that agenda that they've tried to sneak past? So jacking out hasn't really been a big thing, because most people are prepared for that when they face against Jinteki. So they are not, they're not cautious about running on, exactly the amount of cards that I need to get through, right? Like nobody's doing that right now. This one might see some weird synergy depending on if our new criminal friend spikes heavily.
That's true.
Right, because his ability is Nero, is that the
right? It's Nero.
When the first century that you encounter, you're able to jack out.
Right.
So I mean, this one here with Jinteki doing a bunch of damage with century cards, this might, be a one of or two of in your suite, depending on how popular he gets with his jack out tricks.
And it's one of those, like, so the type of decks that tend to run a lot of 3/1s are like Black Tree. And this doesn't really synergize with that because you want the runner to run an access, and it's very rare that they're going halfway and jacking out because they're probably not hitting that much ice or anything like that. Now, I do see the potential of this being in like a taxing style deck. Like if you run on something that's doing a lot of like pinpricks here and there, and you are building servers, and you're trying to come up with ways mid-server to like trip the runner up or just make everything they're doing cost them in some way. But I just don't know. I just don't think that card is there. I don't know if there's enough that really works off of it.
Yeah, because how many times do you play against someone as a Jinteki player and someone actually jacks out?
They're usually always prepared to go all the way through to the end.
Right, exactly like I was trying to make the point before, where people are, they either, draw up and then make the run, or they, have enough cards in their start that they're running first. If they run into something detrimental, they have their end clicks to draw up to fill their hand. So I just don't, I don't see a future for this.
Yeah. Worst thing you like to hear is quality time. All right, run server. And you're like, oh, cool.
It's there, but this is something that I don't think we'll be seeing for a while.
Yeah, I agree.
To put it in based off one runner, it's not worth it. So those are the two agendas that they've scooped up during SanSan. getting into operations, we have recruiting trip. So you search R&D for up to X different sysops by title, reveal them, and add them to HQ. Shuffle R&D. X is also the cost that you're going to pay for this. This card would probably be awesome if people ran sysops.
Right.
But unfortunately, without one, the other one does nothing, right? So
yeah, there's just not enough or good options that really justify running a search card. It kind of feels like maybe it's just better to play with draw cards and then just try to find it. I don't see anything right now where you going and searching for those pieces, it's worth doing it. I don't know. It's my notes on this card is not yet, maybe not ever. So.
I feel the same. I feel the same way because I mean, whenever I've played even experimental decks where I'm trying out those sysops, I never have more than one sysop by title, you know, in that flesh of a dex, right? So I mean, what am I doing with recruiting trip?
Yeah, I think you're trying to do too many parts.
Yeah,
like you're just trying to do too many pieces.
I think that's a good way to summarize it because a sysop should be an addition to a deck, not mandatory where I need to get this sysop out right now or my deck's going to crumble.
It's another one of those. I right now you definitely don't see it, and I don't see any time in the near future where you're going to see that card. At least in competitive play. My opinion. You can disagree.
No, I mean, I don't have a good disagreement argument. If I did, I'd send it your way. But
now I'm going to go to the next game night kit, and some guy's going to be like, wreck me with a recruiting trip deck. just to
spite you. The next operation they have I thought was a very interesting one. This is an offer you can't refuse. Choose a central server. The runner may initiate a run on that server during which he or she cannot jack out. Otherwise, add an offer you can't refuse to your score area as an agenda worth 1 agenda point. This is 4 cost to play. I'll send it over to you for first thoughts.
Sure. So I've played decks with this card. And I am favorable to this card. I think it has potential. I played like a really neat IG that just loaded in tons of traps and fire from archives. And then there was a really cool Tenon deck, I believe it was Tenon, that ran with things like space camps and stuff like that in archives. And it had all these like really cool triggers. If they could hit it, you could just chain a bunch of advancements on under agendas. And it was cool. It was cute. The neat thing about this card, and we'll talk about another one later, is this is a Jinteki card that can allow them to score agenda points effectively without advancing and scoring an agenda. And that can be a really strong ability, in my opinion. So,
I mean, to jump in on that point, I am a firm believer that cards like this are very strong because anytime that you can score agenda points without advancing something or scoring points outside of that, regular agenda way, right? Like I've been a fan of notoriety from a runner perspective. Just something where you can just maybe punch that last point in when you're on 6 and you have no other way to do it, right? I love this card, but for the amount of Jinteki that I've seen over this cycle, I think this is vastly underused.
I agree with that. I mean, I think as an early game card, it's real strong because, I mean, especially if the runner's still doing setup, or what if they're holding a lot of useful things in their hand and they're playing something without a lot of really good recursion. I mean, your timing on this, you can almost use it where it's just a guaranteed point, where the runner's just like, nah, go ahead. And you're like, cool, I paid 4 credits for a point. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it is only 1, right? Like, if this was dropped on me early game and I wasn't set up as a runner, I might be willing, especially against Jinteki, using it in faction here, I might be willing to forfeit that 1 point to them.
Yeah.
Because with the right placement of ice, this could be another bad time for you.
Right. Like, running the server could do a lot more damage than just letting them have the 1 point. And I think that's the mindset you want to build up to them, is like, you're just going to give me this point. You don't want what's in here.
Do you feel that has then led to the downfall of this card? Because it does need, like, we're talking like, oh, it's great to see this early game, but then you already kind of have to be set up enough to, like not set up, but at least have some crazy ice and some money together to be able to make use of this threat, right? This mind game, that Jinteki has. So,
yeah, and it could be a bit too, like, this play style choices. I mean, because you've got to be able to bluff pretty hard to be able to intimidate and strong arm that point out. And maybe some people just don't like playing those type of decks. They want something that just a little more concrete. I don't know, but I do agree, like, you do have to have something to threaten. And certain IDs, like Black Tree and even like Kronos Protocol, like, you have a way to trigger your ability on the runner's turn, on your turn. They hit it. If you have like a shock in archives, then you're just like, cool, I'm going to look and see what's in your hand. I'm going to pick what card goes away, so since you didn't let me score this point. So there's some interesting interactions and stuff you can play around with.
Definitely. And I think it's also a card that can do, like, can do some damage late game when, even if you have a basic piece of damage ice out on the board, if you play this after a runner has made his Hail Mary run, maybe spent all his credits, stole an NAPD or something like that, and he's got no money, you've got him in a situation where he's not going to run through your server because he's not going to be able to, to
break everything. Yeah.
Right? So,
because they have to go all the way to the end of the server. Like, they have to take that run to completion. And so, especially if you're watching how much money and stuff the runner has, you can catch him at the perfect time. Or what if you're sitting on a hand of snares, shocks, good stuff, like, I think there's a lot of favorable situations where the card can be really strong. And I said, again, like, when we get later into some of the future cards, Jinteki is going to get other cards that can trigger, and so there's other ways for them to put points in the score area that are outside of agendas.
Right, yeah, because, I mean, man, as someone who, plays Jinteki also, I can't tell you how many times I'm holding all 3 snares in my hand, and I'm just like, for the love of God, will they run HQ, right? And they won't, right? So,
yeah. It's like,
I mean, at least now you can tell them, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Run here.
Yeah. And so it's cool. I like the card a lot, and I think it should see more play than it does.
Yeah, and it seems like one of those cards that after you've put your deck together and it's like 52 cards, these are, you're like, I don't need these cards. But I mean, I encourage people to actually relook at that. This card has both of our approvals, and it should be seeing play.
Yep.
Into assets now. Jinteki got for our IG players licking their lips, Assets, what? This is an asset, and I'll probably muck the beginning of it. Ali.
Sure, go with it. Someone will correct it. Just it's all right.
Repression.
Oh, you got that part right. It's good.
50%, man. It's a pass. So this card can be advanced. And then what you do is you trash it, swap 1 card in HQ with 1 card in archives for each advancement token on this card. 2 to trash, 2 to res. What's your thoughts here? I can tell you that I have not seen this card played at all.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god, this card is great. I love this card. Like, it's seen, I think one of the first times I saw it used a lot, Pacer was playing it as RP a bunch. Is this another, like, recursion style card? But I think it's only going to get better as time goes on. Like, there's some really neat, like, janky interactions you can do. Like, there was an IG deck I was playing where I was using subliminal messaging. And so you could use it to cycle stuff back, toss your subliminals in to trade out for stuff and trash. And the cool thing is this card can get itself back. So you can advance it, res it, trash it, and use one of those advancements to put it back. So you can then just reinstall it, reload it, just to keep cycling stuff. There's some really cool interactions, and I've seen some pretty creative, like, deck combos and some people have used on this card, and I like it. As an IG player, you should definitely like it. you should learn to enjoy some of the things you can do with this card.
To appreciate this?
Yeah.
I think, I'm hoping to see more cards interact somehow with archives down the way, and I think that's when my love for this card will be boosted. For example, I'm sure we'll see, like, later on we can talk about it, but a card that's already been spoiled is Ramen Ra.
Yeah.
Right? So, when we get things like that and I can move things around, I really didn't see myself putting this card into my IG style decks. Mostly because I the low trash on it. I went a different style of IG, and I didn't really need to cycle as much. So, if you're telling me to take a look, maybe I'll go back and revisit some stuff here. But I didn't see this in competitive play.
Yeah, it's a good card. It gets my approval. I think you'll see more and more stuff able to use it. And I'm not saying it's like a 3 of, like, loaded up, but it's a good, like, 1 of or 2 of in certain decks. There's some cool interactions it has.
Rolling through, we have another asset that we got, a little easier to pronounce. This is called Genetics Pavilion. This was 1 to res, 5 to trash.
Yeah.
The runner cannot draw more than 2 cards during his or her turn. This is 5 influence. Hollis and I talked about this on our influence show.
Yeah.
But I didn't see this card really played either.
Yeah, the only decks I've played it in is, like, one of my IG, like, tax blacklist decks, just to kind of keep the runner from being able to keep rebuilding their hand. I could see Blacktree playing it.
And that's where my thoughts go the most. Where you're, maybe trying to set up some kind of kill, Jinteki style kill, until they can run in and trash this, or, you are more offensive with EMPs.
Yeah. Other things I saw is maybe as more and more of the Plane of Food style cards come out, if they play on a lot of getting the runner to draw cards, maybe it could be a way to not give them so much of that benefit. I don't know. That's stretching it a bit. But in IG, I see decks where the Pavilion's really cool. One, because it's just a cheap to res, high trash cost card.
The ratio there is unbelievable for even if you're not getting full value out of the ability of this card, it's still a phenomenal res to trash ratio.
Right. And just listening to Kate players complain about how bad their quality times are is worth it all by itself, because they're just looking at it and they're like, I don't even want to play this card. I don't even know why I have this. And you're like, oh man, you should just go and trash this for 1 million credits.
I think for those people that are watching along or listening, if you take a drink every time you have an anti-quality time mentioned, I think people are going to get pretty buzzed by the end of this.
Yeah, sorry, Jinteki players. That's one of those cards when you hear the other player play it, you're just like, God.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you. Do you have anything else other than to say about Genetics Pavilion? It's other than a little bit of a thorn in someone's side.
Yeah,
it's easily played around.
Yeah, I agree. I I think it's good. I think it's a good card. But that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know yet if it's not like the linchpin of any deck, but it's a nice include. It's got good uses.
On to the sole upgrade of this cycle here. This was the ever-hyped Marcus Batty. This was the card that, Lucas came on and stirred the pot a little bit, telling us we're getting a Psi ability card in this one that will rival Caprice. And, our chats down below and in those episodes just burned up with speculations and stuff.
Yeah, Marcus, and it just steamrolled right through Worlds. No one could stop it. I mean, people. Oh no, wait, that's not.
I think people tried this for a week or 2 weeks and then slotted Caprice back in, or or they were running Caprice and Marcus and realized I didn't need Marcus so much.
I think the fear of Marcus probably motivated people to come up with decks where they didn't need to interact with the corporation. They were just like, wait, if I just DLR them, I don't need to worry about Marcus Batty. I just get by it. I just wait till they run out of cards. They can't stop me. And there you go. So that's what we have to thank him for.
That's a believable story for anyone who don't know.
Yeah. But he's a great card. I like him a bunch, and I definitely think there are decks that enjoy using him. Like in certain decks, he could be like the emergency maybe Caprice.
Everybody that's playing Nisei Division is like, yes, another Psi game. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
exactly. I've seen cool decks out of Chronos Protocol that also use him and play around with things like Grail Ice or just anything with Trash a Program, like RP decks like him. So he's a strong card. He's good.
We won't touch on it as much since we are pretty much, Jinteki focused, but I will say that I saw him more out of faction than in faction.
I could see that. I mean, because he's not crazy on influence.
No, so. He was. I saw him during the experimental time, either people trying to drop a brain damage on someone with cybernetics, or just basically scoring remote pop and end run, right? So,
yeah. And especially HB makes a lot of sense because also with all the recursion they have, I mean, between team sponsorship to like archive memories and everything like that, they also have so many ways they can just keep pulling them back in and just keep loading them up on those servers to make it real obnoxious. So
agreed. But for what he was doing in faction, he was neither here nor there. I mean, his res to trash ability is on par with other powerful abilities like this. You can't make something stupid and one-sided. So it is what it is. If you need him, he's there. But
yeah, he did help to crap on a lot of criminal players. So it's another thing too, because a lot of people were just like, "Oh no, criminals are going to lose all their breakers. They're going to be so bad. I can't stop this. I'm bad at side games."
Oh yeah, for the I'm going to make a trash, the trash program subroutine, double fire or something.
Yeah, it's terrible. But so yeah, I mean, he's definitely a card you need to respect, and I think in the decks that play him, he's great.
He is a sysop, if you want synergy. If you want the synergy, right?
Yeah, and still no recruiting trips.
I think Caprice is a sysop too, right?
Yeah, look at that. So. 2 great cards. Obviously, you want to be able to tutor for them. No.
So that was the only upgrade that we saw during that cycle.
But it was a great one.
It was good. It was good. It's nice that the game gives you these options, right? Like as the designers out there give you these tools to put in your tool belt. Even especially a card like this. Like some other cards you can question, but this card here, I think it's a great card. Maybe it was underused.
That's true.
Maybe the design team are just like sitting in a room thinking like, why isn't this card as used as it is, but
yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, a lot of people kind of jump factions and stuff a lot, so I don't know. It's great. It's a good card.
Now we're going to get into the ice aspect of what we saw from this cycle. Those people expecting a barrier will be disappointed. First up is the Century. This is AP. This is Cortex Lock. This is when this came out. Did this ruin games first turn, first run? I've seen this card win more games when it was out first run than I've seen any other card do it.
Yeah.
Res is 2, Strength is 4, 1 subroutine. Do 1 net damage for each unused MU the runner has.
Awesome.
This card is phenomenal.
It's a great piece of early game ice. I've seen the same thing. I remember my first time playing against Apex. I was like, cool, I get to play against Apex, and then like turn 2, like face check a Cortex Lock and just die. And I was like, well, that was underwhelming. But that's it. I mean, it's really good. It's strong, and it's also not immediately killed by Mimic, which is a big problem a lot of sentries have. Like, it's just out of Mimic range that they have to come up with some way to drop your strength. Data sucker, but they have to do it.
Oh, I thought this was brilliant design at the 4 strength limit, 1 subroutine. This was a card Jinteki was looking for to give them new spice in their kill arsenal. Yeah. Something to stop, like you said, the early game face check. So I'm just going to run here. Oh, I'll run there. Take 1 pinprick of damage. Take this. This was like stop. This made people find their sentries, put it down, and then start running. Right? Like
it was no longer like I have my Mimic, I'm safe. It's like I have my Mimic, but what if it's a Cortex Lock? And it's definitely seen enough play that now that's a piece of ice people think about when they're playing against Jinteki. You'll see a lot of players go, is this a Cortex Lock? Or I hope it's not a Cortex Lock. Or they'll sit there and they'll check their MU before they do a run and factor in how much damage they could potentially take. So it's a great card.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth an include in most Jintekis, and it should be in your build up until like the last possible cut time.
Yeah.
If you're not synergizing with a certain kill theme in Jinteki, you might cut this one off. But if you can get this early game, this is still a phenomenal piece of ice that will slow them down.
Yeah, I mean, even in some of the RP Glacier style builds or whatever, like hitting the runner with an early game Cortex Lock stalled them out usually enough that they just couldn't catch back up with you. So it's great. Like, I think you should at least try to get like 1 in. It's probably a solid 2 of. Like, there's just so many decks that run it, and it's just a great card.
100% agree at the 2. So that was the 1 Century that was included, and it was a doozy. Let's get to one of the most powerful code gates Jinteki got this cycle here. This is Crick. So this is resing at 1, strength of 3. Crick has +3 strength while protecting archives. Install a card from archives, paying its install cost. This was a card that we saw. This definitely saw play as well as Cortex Lock. This is still definitely seeing play here. I've even seen people double Crick over archives.
Yeah. I will go ahead and say this is probably one of the best pieces of ice in the whole cycle. Like, so many different ways that I've seen this card used. The double Crick archives is terrifying. So especially after you've gone and you've trashed assets and loaded stuff up, the last thing you want to do is just run and then let them pull a bunch of that stuff back. Ice destruction decks. Anything that can like do recursion and pull it back. It's annoying. There's even been some really cool interactions with Crick where you can fire it to install in your server to like rearrange and readjust its build. It's kind of weird to explain, but if you kind of look at some of the rulings and stuff on it, but I saw Pacer do this in her team tournament where a crick fired, and he was able to kind of like install to rearrange like a new piece of ice that the runner couldn't get through, but he was able to like break the server down to then put it to where the runner had to encounter it. And I don't know, there's just so many crazy interactions. You can like use it to get cards out of remotes, just overwrite. It's just awesome. I probably rambled a bunch there, but it's just such a good card. It's so good, and its res cost is insanely cheap for the powerful ability you get off of it.
Yeah, this for all these ones, I don't know if it was an actual term that the community gave them, but the placement ice, this is plus 3 strength over archives. HB had Touring. This rivaled Touring for usability. Yeah,
and I think out of the gate, this one was really strong because it was the one that you saw the most when that pack came out. Turing started to build up a lot of strength as Faust saw more and more play.
Yeah, because it had a bonus ability to stop AI breakers. So yeah, Turing was more of a late, peak. It. This one here, I mean, as you and me know, for IG players, this is all. I mean, I've played games where this is all I've had over my archives. I mean, run to the cows come home. I mean, like 1 credit to res, you're also stopping those early, data sucker buildups that we used to see back in the day. I just love this card.
It's great, and again, like just how cheap it is the res. Like from a runner side, like even just checking, it's like you're not costing the corp that much money. You're probably giving them such a better benefit face checking it to get through. It's just, you just don't want to see it. It's so bad, and this ability to kind of make archives is not desirable at all. It's rough because it gets around Yogg, and I'm a fan of anything that gets around Yogg.
Touche, my friend. Moving on, we have another code gate. This is a Psy.
No. This does not get around Yogg.
Clairvoyant Monitor. This is 4 to res, and it is 3 strength. 1 subroutine. Maybe the one is all you need. Let's see. You and the runner secretly spend standard Psy. Reveal spent credits. If you and the runner spent a different number of credits, place 1 advancement token on an installed card and end the run.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's great if you're looking for an end the run. I mean, there's your slash barrier, right? Your slash snowflake.
Right. Well, I mean, it's 4 to res for strength 3 code gate. That's a big problem. Like, even though Yogg didn't see as much play as it has been, it's always a concern. You're always going to see code gates coming out. Then the first thing is, oh, you can Yogg it. And Yoggable code gates are always hard to find good spots in decks. And to pay 4 to res something that they can just Yogg through it. Yeah, I don't know. I love side game stuff, but I don't think I'm a huge fan of this piece of ice.
Yeah, and to me, it's when I've looked at cards, or like code gate strength 3 particularly. I always say to myself, okay, this is Yoggable, so it goes into this pile over here. But then within this group, there's got to be 2 splits, right? And you got to look at the ability. You're like, if they don't have Yogg out, and they fire this subroutine, is it detrimental enough to get off once or twice before they can get Yogg out? And this card is not really doing that.
Yeah, you have to catch them off guard with it. Then you have to win the side game. And if you don't have anything to really benefit from the advancement aspect of it, you just did all of this for an in the run subroutine. Yes. You could have just res the snowflake.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't. Right now, I am not a fan of this card.
No, I mean, it seems like it. Obviously, it's the side game ability. I mean, you can play it in your Nisei deck.
Right.
You know, place a free advancement token on something. I don't really feel like you really need to do that for any assets or agendas that you're already playing in Jinteki.
Well, so can you place it? It's not in the same server, right? You can place on any card that can be advanced.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. You could build Ronin up with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically, but I mean, I think this, you know, most of those advancement cards that you're going to look for, something like this, is maybe in a tenon where you're playing that ability, so you have those advanced cards within the build already, and you're just getting free advancements and building something stronger, building that 17 strength ice wall up or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the better IDs you'll see this card used in. That, and of course, Nisei just for another side game. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't really, I can't really justify or look somebody in the face without cracking a smile to say this is an include in both those IDs, right? Like, this is not an auto include.
No, not at all.
I don't think we will see something like this used because like you said, so it's Yogg and it's not worth those one or two times that this is going to hit.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a pass. I think even as if you get more side game stuff, like even as a code gate, is this a good enough code gate to make it in those decks? Mm-hmm. And again, like the ability just doesn't seem good enough to me.
Yeah.
To me. Yes. You can completely disagree, and I respect your opinion.
Make all disagreements in comments below.
Yeah. So I'll see you at the table with your recruiting trip. Clairvoyant monitor decks. We'll do this.
We'll battle. We'll throw down. Jinteki got another code gate. This is just a straight ice code gate. This is 0 to res, which is always nice. Always nice. This is 5 strength, which is always nice.
Yeah.
As a code gate. But this is one subroutine. We're not going to really... I mean, it's one influence too, so all that jazz. But, you know, being a Jinteki only show, we're not talking about splashing it out. The runner cannot draw cards for the remainder of this turn.
Lockdown. I like it. I think it's a cool one of include, and a few I've seen some cool Black Tree decks that run it. I think it's a neat card, especially because it's not yoggable. It doesn't cost you anything to res, and it can give the runner pause, because depending on the timing of their turn that they make the run, which is usually early, because they want to run early, so if they hit something bad, they can draw back up.
Right, and I was going to talk about the timing of this as well. Most people that play those Jinteki pinpricked style decks, this fits into those builds because, like you said, it's a run. Oh, I get some damage, and my last couple clicks are either play a card that I can power draw up to be safe, or I'm using those individual clicks for draw.
Yeah.
And this is going to give you those windows to, if they hit something, now if you're holding EMPs, you can, finish the job in those style of straight kill decks. Yeah. I think it's a good card.
It's another way to get around I've had worse as well. So if you hit it, they don't get the draw off of it. I'm correct in that, right? Yeah. Yeah. There's a silence, nope, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a cool card. There's not really been a time where I've rezzed it and I haven't seen the runner stop for a second and just go yeah, I guess I'll let it fire, because even if they pay to break it, it's usually not going to be cheap for them, and it didn't cost you anything to do it.
Yeah, and you got to be smart about it. If it's fourth click and they're run.
Right. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, don't be you can't draw nothing now. Bam, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right, because obviously you just wasted the element of surprise. And Jinteki is, for those people that are new to the game or watching this to catch up on, their introductory to Netrunner, Jinteki is a faction that is very heavily based on timing. The right timing to pull certain traps, to make certain moves, to play certain head games. And that's just going to come in practice and feel of your deck. I don't think you can pick up a deck that has all these Jinteki whacked out fundamentals, play it twice, you don't win the games, and you're like, this deck sucks. Right? Yeah. Like you really, like, you read up any big Jinteki article, like someone's like, Chris Hinkey's, when he made his IG deck, like the first paragraph, it says in there somewhere, this is a hard deck to pilot. If you, blah, 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 if you play it and it loses, don't think it's a shit deck. Right. So, I mean,
and there's a lot of different styles of Jinteki, but there's some of them that definitely like reward patience and timing. And a lot of those really good decks, it does take those people who are really good with them have piloted that deck a lot, and they're familiar with how it works. They're comfortable playing it. And that's a big thing too, because a lot of times going into a new deck, you don't have that bluff factor because you're still trying to learn how the deck plays, and so you're not really selling it that well. So when you're throwing the traps down or you're setting up those servers, you're not doing a good job of like, oh, what is this? When you're sitting there like reading the cards and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll install this. And I don't know. But it does. It takes a lot of practice and stuff to do it.
Yeah. So I think this is a good card. It definitely has a home in those power damage style decks.
Yeah, agree.
The last card that they got from an Arsenal suite is a piece of ice that is a trap. This is 2 to res and it's 0 cost. Whenever it's a trap is exposed, do 2 net damage. Subroutine: the runner trashes one of his or her installed cards. Trash, it's a trap. So first off, the encountered or the exposed piece on this is almost worthless at this point in time.
Yeah. Everyone stopped playing those janky Snitch or Vaw Chaos 3 decks just before this card came out. It was just lying in that data pack, waiting for its moment.
FFG staff so excited. They're like, wait till I get a load of this one.
Right. And then it comes out. They're like, oh, we're done with those silly decks. We're not playing that anymore. And then it's like straight to the binder this card goes. Oh, well.
Even, maybe this missed its timing in the life of Netrunner in general. I mean, if you were out with Core Set and Genesis and stuff like that, people are like playing the infiltration against Jinteki, being like, expose this piece of ice. Okay, I'm not going to run. Now people are just like, no breakers, no anything. Run here. Run here. I don't need to see what the ice is first. I'm just gonna run. I'm just gonna.
It is interesting getting more stuff that punishes expose, though, because now you have a piece of ice that does it, and then Psy Shield, or Psychic Shield, punishes expose. But right now in the game, expose just isn't played enough, and I think some of that could be though is that you don't see a lot of like damaging Jinteki played in the meta. Most of the Jinteki you saw was RP, and so even against the faction where you won expose, you didn't really need it versus the most popular ID in it because you weren't really going to hit anything too terrible.
But you're already playing like triple Zaibatsu anyway, right? So.
Yeah, you're shutting that down. It's wasting cards. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe if the need for that, or you get better exposed cards. I think that's a big problem too. Is right now the exposed cards just aren't that great.
So I mean, where I was going to take this little tidbit for this card is if we see exposed become popular again, or a mechanic that exposes, or something exposed related that just becomes so good, then this card obviously increases in value. But when I read something like this, like when you pull this card out of the pack and you're like, okay, expose is not really being used, and it says, this card has an exposed effect. Sometimes it makes me wonder, like, is something coming like that though, right? But time will tell.
Yeah, because there's just not. There's not enough right now.
Why drop this one card here that nobody's infiltration?
Yeah, it could be a really funny like one of. I could maybe see some decks play around with a one of, but again, like, what card are you playing this for? What are you lying in wait to catch?
Yeah, I mean, that set aside, there is a subroutine on it that the runner trashes one of his or her installed cards, which is good. I mean, but the runner chooses.
Yeah,
and when you have an option to the runner, it takes some of the sting out of the card. Let alone, there's a lot of people that run AI now.
Yeah,
it's not as uncommon to have an AI breaker in your suite, with the popularity of Faust.
I mean, it's true. They're all over the place. That's a big reason why I think like cards like Kitsune have lost a lot of its power, just because you see AI breakers all over the place.
Right, and back in the day when it wasn't so popular, Trap Ice, because it could only be broken by AI, was a lot more riskier, and maybe that's why, I say this missed its point, because that's back when expose was more of a thing that people did.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I didn't see It's a Trap included anywhere. I played it. I didn't play it because it was just deck slots I didn't have to try out.
Yeah, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
To play this card right now.
So that's the full tool set that they gave you. What do you think on the cards overall?
I mean, I think it was a really good mix of some good power cards, some cards that have like potential lying in wait, to just duds, just binder fodder. But I think
a nice bell curve, right?
Right. But it was a good spread. Like, they saw like a good mix of stuff overall in the cycle. So I think it was pretty good for them.
I agree. There's pieces in there that Jinteki needed, and they seem to, whether they are useful or not, gave, it's like they handed a card to every ID, right?
Right.
You could potentially map a card to an ID, even how relevant that ID is in the current meta. Jinteki also got 2 IDs this pack, so let's get into those. The first one was, it was really cool because this introduced the flip into Netrunner. So this is the Jinteki Biotech, Life Imagined. Before taking your first turn, you may swap this card out for with any copy of Jinteki Biotech. So that alone was an amazing mind game Jinteki ability. And then the 3 clicks, you flipped it, and it revealed whatever you were playing. I thought this was phenomenally well done, well designed. It was there from every aspect except competitive.
True. I'm a big fan of this ID.
I don't mean to for my little spiel to take away from my love for this card
right.
or this ID, but I just mean, like, I never really saw somebody come with an intense Jinteki Biotech deck that was just winning championship after championship, right? Like,
right.
It was. I've seen a few of them make cut. I've seen a few of them, top 4. I haven't seen anybody sweep the board with a Jinteki Biotech.
Yeah, it's true. I put this in the still has potential category. I mean, it just seems like an ID that gives you flexibility, as like this ID does, should be really good, but it's just not there yet. It's cool. I think what you want to do is try to build a deck that can utilize at least 2 of the 3 sides, and I think that's really hard. And I think most people build these decks where they know exactly which one they're picking every single game, and it's not really benefiting a lot from the strength of the ID.
Right, and I mean, that's where my mind went when this originally came out. Trying to build something that could, when you sit down at the table, I look at, I'm playing a game against you, I look down, oh, you're playing such and such runner ID? Well, make the switch, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Now I have the counter to your style. But when you do that, there wasn't enough cards in the Jinteki pool to build enough diversity into the deck so it could go anyway.
Yeah, I think sometimes you end up building 3 bad decks instead of like 1 good one. And I think that's the problem with this one, is you end up like watering it down, trying to take advantage of too much stuff. But it's a cool idea. Like, it's still got like one of the coolest mechanics in the game, and I still play it a lot. Like, every now and then when I just get bored, I want to play something different, I'll sleeve over the Biotech and go and start playing around with it. There was a cool one. I had a chance to play it myself, but I think someone took one to King of Servers, and they played like a really cool like Rush style build of it. That was using like Grail, I believe. I could be way off on this. If I am, I'm sorry. But I remember looking at this and I thought it was really cool. Like, it was a neat like twist on it. But there's cool IDs and like cool decks and stuff I've seen with it. So.
Oh man, I just got notified in the chat that that my mic isn't broadcasting.
What? No. Well, you're recording this, so you can post the audio up later there.
Oh man. Well, yeah.
Oh great! You're just gonna hear all my opinions.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's why probably I saw so many people join and then leave, Yeah. But all those people didn't say squat before. But yeah, we're pumping an audio feed out. I'll see what we can do. But it's very interesting that so the one I saw the most of is the greenhouse. People trying to build that Jinteki rush. 4 advancements on something, boom, 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 rush it out. I rarely saw the tank played. So the tank is when you flip the identity shuffle archives into R&D, basically using a free levy. And then obviously the brewery was second to the greenhouse. When you flip it, do 2 net damage.
Yeah. Same. I mean, it's the same. Like, the 4 advancement, just to be able to blind score Nisei was like initially out of the gate, like the really good ability this ID had. And then you just don't really see much of anything. I feel like the net damage one would have been a lot better. I think people would have liked it more if it was 3 instead of 2. But it's free net damage. But
yeah, I think 3 falls on that line that's, you walk the line between danger there, right? Because I think they made 2 net damage. I think it's too safe. I mean, because if you look at a build like Adam already starts 2 cards down.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's that bubble where it's like, it's damaging, but not damaging enough to push it to something, of meat, of value. I think that's why a lot of people did gravitate towards the greenhouse for the 4 advancements. And plus even the 2 net damage, it's you're really burning your whole turn for 2 net damage.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It's almost like that time where they'd have to finish with 1 card in hand, right? Like,
yeah, it's real hard. Like, I think those Valley Grid decks was probably one of the better ways to use the 2 net damage, but that's so hard to set up. Like, you've got to build like a real taxing like server where there's a lot of little pieces of ice, plus keep the valley grid, and it's cool. It's a neat idea. It's a cool way to use that region, but yeah, the 4 advancement was far and away the best option under biotech.
Did you have anything else to add to biotech stuff?
Nope. Still a really fun ID. Yeah. Still really like it.
The other one we saw was Chronos Protocol. This is obviously from the vote, the Chronos Protocol. The Europeans we have to thank for this. They voted this one over the HB one, which I'm still a little sad about.
Yeah, I lost out in both of those events. Both of the IDs I wanted didn't make it.
So did I, my friend. The first net damage the runner suffers each turn, you may look at the runner's grip, select the card that is trashed. This sounds like a really powerful identity, but net damage does not seem to land as much when you're not playing Black Tree.
Yeah. I agree. But I really like this ID. When I first saw it, it was just like, oh, that's cool. And then as you start playing it and then figuring out like creative ways to trigger it, and that's where like Shock is, playing with like shock snares, lots of different like little pinprick stuff. There's a deck called Man with the Machine Gun that's on RDB. Me and another guy in our meta, like Colby, sleeved up variations of it, and it's really cool. And I think it's like an on the right path idea to kind of play it. And it used things like data mines and stuff as well. Like, remember data mine? But you just come up, you just start pulling anything you can just to deal like little points in net damage. I think some of the negative is that recursion for Shaper and even Anarch is still pretty easy right now. So the only decks that tend to really get hosed by this ID are criminals, if you can just take their breakers and snipe them early. If there becomes better ways to lock down recursion, I could see this ID like rocketing up to being a lot more powerful.
Yeah, I would agree in that, because I mean that's all you're really targeting is breakers with this one here, because you're just trying to get the extra, like create a scoring window for yourself, obviously. But most of the decks these days, like with Anarch and with Shaper, that recursion is built in so nicely that you have to assume that they're running some kind of recursion. And Criminal, the only one that has a hard time recurring stuff, but they make do.
Yeah, there's still good answers and stuff, or they just splash it. Yeah. They just pay the influence and pull it in from another faction.
But this is something that I don't know if enough people. I don't know if enough people who voted for it are playing it.
That's true. I think they voted for game balance, and that's fear. Yeah. You're letting fear rule your decision making.
So I mean, this is it's very interesting ID, very powerful at the right times.
It's cool. It's a cool ID.
We'll see where it can go. Right now, it's not very high on the competitive charts. Let's take a stroll into some of the stuff that we've seen with the Moonbat cycle. I want to touch with Plano here. Palena Foods. Standard build, 45-15. The first time each turn the runner draws a card, gain a credit. Very, very interesting and backwards style of Jinteki play. Yeah. I mean, like, just look at all the cards that we've seen in SanSan, and everything is stopping the runner from drawing. I mean, mind you, this says each turn, so I mean, the runners obviously can draw cards on his turn, so you get a credit. I mean, we're bound to see some cards that feed into this, but but I don't know if 1 or 2 credits is going to be like 1 or 2 credit gain, and that's not guaranteed every time, is worth it to play this identity.
Yeah,
I'm really going to have to see the support cards that come with it to make a judgment call. But I mean, to me, it loses the mind games fun kind of that is Jinteki, right? And so I'm not drawn to this card as I've been drawn to some of the other ones.
Yeah, right now, as I've seen the few things that's been spoiled that appears to be made to synergize with Plana Foods, I just keep thinking about other IDs that could use that card better in a way that's more harmful to the runner than I gained a credit. Gotcha. I don't know. Maybe it's. I haven't really. I mean, granted, like, yes, econ has kind of been a thing that Jinteki's struggled with in the past, but they've gotten so many good tools in like Celebrity Gift, a Sundew, and things like that to really help them out in that game plan. That you're like, ooh, a Jinteki ID with built-in econ when the runner plays. I just don't know. I'm not sure what the builds and stuff are for this deck.
No, neither am I. I mean, it's going to remain to be flushed out, but we've seen, most of the time, you don't want the runner to draw up because you're going for that kill, right? So it just seems backwards Jinteki right now.
Right, you're building a completely different style deck,
which might be it'd be very interesting, but
I mean, as I said, like as more stuff gets revealed, it'll probably all start clicking and making sense. Right now, I think as I joked about earlier, it's like you will be very excited to play against a max player because you're just making money every turn. But I don't know yet. It's still in like a wait and see. Like initially, I'm not too impressed with the ID ability, but it could get there. Yeah. There could be some things that haven't been revealed yet that really highlights its benefit.
Another card that we've seen is the Moonbad City Grid. This is a region. Whenever the runner passes a piece of ice protecting this server, you may swap that ice with another piece of ice protecting this server. Interesting ability. I mean, the name is also, you'd think it'd be crazy powerful because this is the Moonbad cycle and this is the Moonbad City Grid. But in the past, we have not really seen a lot of utilization with the whole ice switching, swapping, moving people around, breaking the run up kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I've asked a lot of questions on this card when it was spoiled, just trying to make sure I get the interaction correct. And I believe I have it understood that, let's say you have a 3 deep server and the runner encounters and breaks that first piece of ice. You then Moonbad City Grid to slide that piece of ice to position 2. Then the runner encounters it again. And then because the runner doesn't move with the ice, because it doesn't say like the runner continues its run from that position.
Right. But you have to take whatever was at 2 and move it up.
Correct. But think about if you're playing with like Grail. They hit a Grail, you load up subs, slide the Grail down to position 2, load up subs, slide it again. Like, granted, these are like corner case synergies, but there's some interesting pieces of ice, like Grail. Kamainu could be really strong here. I don't know why they would keep running, but maybe you've played with something they did, and you're like, I guess I'll move and add more subs to Kamainu. Why did you do that? I mean, even if you think about like hitting a toll booth multiple times, like if you hit a toll booth and then they just move the toll booth down again, you're like, how many times am I going to hit this toll booth? And again, this is all assuming I'm understanding the interaction correctly. But
I believe so. I believe so. I mean, it doesn't like, because there's been other ones that specifically say the run continues from the new location.
Right. But so, like, I could see certain like builds and ideas that could take advantage of this card, and I think like Grail is one of the better ones if you want to bring Grail back for another deck attempt.
Another hoorah!
Right, just a way to like load subs, then move it, and it keeps those subs, and then keep adding to the same piece of ice.
I mean, it's definitely in the right faction to drop a couple punishing runs after another. So.
So
we'll see. It remains to be seen.
Yeah,
it's an interesting piece, and like I said, maybe it's very, very powerful, underrated, because hey, it's the Moonbad cycle.
Right. So we'll see on that one. It's cool. I'm put it in the wait and see category.
Yeah. We saw the top of a very interesting card, improved protein source, an agenda that's 4/3. Nothing else other than that. I think that's really cool.
There has to be a really good negative to balance this out, because just having a 4/3, yeah, that seems fantastic. Like, why would sure, like that's great.
Whatever
it's a great
they have up their sleeve is definitely going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the yin and yang to that agenda is going to be. The next one here, I think I do have another picture for it. Clones are not people. This is a current. This was another cool one that plays against our agendas scoring at different times, or points being acquired at different times. Standard current rules apply. This is a 3 cost. When you score an agenda, add clones are not people to your score area as an agenda worth 1 agenda point. So basically it's your way to, like, once you score, it's basically the current is trashed. So
yeah, it's cool. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about with offer you can't refuse. Is now Jinteki has 2 ways to score agenda points outside of the scoring agendas. Granted, you have to be scoring agenda to fire this, but like, think like the 2/1 can now effectively be a 2/2 if you set this up, and you get an extra point and stuff off of it. It's cool. And the fact that thematically, this is a really awesome card, just because it really plays into the whole like Jinteki clones. I just like the story and stuff behind the card.
I agree as well. Yeah. I think that art is cool, where the Jinteki symbol, all the clone people. I think this should this should be thrown into the playmat potential discussion art right here for something like that.
It's really cool. But I like this card, and I think it has some really neat potential. I mean, Jinteki has some really cool ID and tools for being able, like, just to score agendas, even like janky fast advanced builds. I don't know, but I like this card, and I see it could go to some good places.
I don't have really anything bad to say about this, man.
Yeah.
I think as currents pick up speed, I think this is a great one.
Especially if, because I mean, think about like some Jinteki players played, you would run a current just to counter a runner current.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great one. Like, so you can shut down a runner current, and it could potentially be worth an extra point for you if you score an agenda off of it.
Yeah. And like you said, with Jinteki, it gives you the ability to build up, right? Like you're scoring like the 2-for-1, for example, right? Now that 2-for-1 with this out, obviously there's some setup, but that becomes the 2-for-2, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great swing. So you're always going to be scoring, well, okay, so unless you put this in HB and you score domestic sleepers, but you're always at least going to get at least 2 points with this card, and that's great. I think.
And if you're seeing more cards, because it's another thing that you can sack. So if you also see better cards that require you to sack agendas to trigger their ability, I believe this is another card that can synergize off those paid abilities or whatever.
Yeah, a comment from the chat here saying that he sees this synergizing well with the greenhouse.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So I think that's a great point to bounce off of another
biotech coming up.
Yeah, right. But really excited for this current.
It's a really cool card.
Some other stuff that we've seen here is an interesting one. It's an asset, and it's an alliance executive. This is 1 to res, 3 to trash. This is Ramen Ray. This card costs 0 influence if you have 6 or more non-alliance Jinteki cards in your deck. Once per turn, you may lose a click when you draw a card. If you do, reveal that card and swap. If you do, reveal that card and a card in archives of the same type, then swap those cards. Did you get that?
I did. It's going to be one of the most fun cards to explain to players. All right, stay with me. This is what we're about to do.
I think it's really, really cool because I've always been a fan of these weird draw mechanic cards. Everyone knows Lady in a Red Dress is one of my favorite cards of all time. This card actually lets you draw the card, decide then if you want to use it. Like, you don't have to decide before you've drawn saying, okay, I'm going to swap whatever card this is out. I look at it, then I can choose to use him.
Yeah. It's cool. I could definitely see it too, like if you're fishing for something like IG. He's an asset, check. He can search and pull things out of your archives, which IG is constantly filling archives up. So now you can kind of get the ability of, is this card I just drew useful? No. But this same type in archives is way better than what I need. So you get the ability to cycle those tools out. He's interesting. Seeing what you can do to really take advantage of those abilities. There's definitely going to be some really cool like play testing and theory crafting to see what you can dig up with it. But he's an interesting asset.
I agree. I think he's going to be a great play in IG. I can't wait to try him out in some decks because IG, when you're building an IG deck, it's really a brain buster sometimes because I don't feel that you can put that many one-offs in there because you have to be pitching cards almost off the start to be able to feed the IG ability. And sometimes you're making hard choices. You're like, I don't need this card right now, but this is going to be great 5 turns from now.
Yeah.
And then you can also transition from your ice, your stuff like the Cortex lock, like we said, great early game, but if you don't see it early game, I can now switch that Cortex for another, something I need. Yeah. Boom, pull it back, install, rah.
And it's another way to kind of fuel loading up archives with like shocks and stuff like that, because you don't necessarily need to overdraw to pitch them that way. Mm-hmm. You can just draw a click and you're like, oh, I'll trade this for an asset that I can actually install and play on my game board while putting some negative stuff in my archives for the runner. So we talk a lot about IG. so apologize if you're not a fan of that ID, and then not apologize because why are you not a fan of that ID?
Then another one we saw is the Chitana. It's another Psi one. The player gains 2. Each player gains 2 money. You and the runner secretly spend, reveal spent credits. If you and the runner spent a different number of credits, do 1 net damage for each card in the runner's grip. We don't know what the strength is of that. It's AP Psi. Obviously, Nisei is going to enjoy it. It's some teeth in that deck. It could be fun somewhere else, too. So, we don't want to speculate too much there without seeing the rest of the card. But it
seems neat.
Yeah.
I'm already a fan of a Psi game ice that is upfront giving you the money for the Psi game. So it's that confident that it's like, here, just here's 2 credits.
And we have Voter Intimidation. It's a gray ops Psi. Play only if there is an agenda in the runner's score area. If you and the runner secretly spend 0, 1, 2, 3, reveal spent credits. If it's a different number, trash 1 resource. So, could be good against those DLR decks that are, making an appearance.
Yeah. It's another cool card. Potentially could see some really good play. I like it. It's neat.
That covers pretty much, some of the spoilers. We've gone through the cycle. Is there anything else you want to, touch on, Cory, quick? Some cool Jinteki stuff that you're seeing out and about?
I will say, like, one of our last game night kits, we did a league at our store, and one of the rules was you had to play different IDs every week. So it was helping new players kind of try a bunch of things out. And one night, I swear, like, half the field was Black Tree. And it just lined up. And then playing in that, you realize how out of practice you can get playing against those IDs. And then I realized, like, especially with how, like, the world season and stuff progressed, how you didn't see those IDs nearly as much. And then when you go so long, like, not playing against them, it messes you up a bunch when you have to just completely change gears and go, wait a second. I could just die in any of these runs. Like, I now have to think about everything I'm doing. Like, I have to play these shell games again that I haven't had to in such a long time. And I definitely can see, like, a lot of that stuff coming back. And just being another way to play Netrunner that can keep people on the edge. Because I feel like some people have gotten too complacent with, like, oh, ETF. All right, cool. So they're going to Glacier. And even, like, RP and some of the, like, Fast Advance. That, like, that threat of, like, Black Tree has kind of been lying in wait.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we did we were going to go in and talk about some of the other IDs that and how they're evolved and stuff like that. But I mean, we've already kind of sat here for an hour and a half, so maybe we'll have to thin this out to another time. Yeah,
especially if some of the more of the cycle comes out, so we can kind of come back and see if anything's popped up.
Yeah, I mean, just let it be known that replicating perfection at this time was a little bit dethroned. It's not as dominant, and then MedTech, Tenon, Nisei really didn't see much action throughout the course of this cycle, and P's always going to, I think, be there. It's a core set identity, and then IG, right?
Yeah.
What can you say?
So good.
So I mean, I think there you have it, guys, for this introductory episode to all things Jinteki. Thanks a bunch for joining us, and really appreciate your time. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, take care.